Dead men tell no tales, but their ships speak volumes. Welcome to the Cursed Compass, where we explore the darkest maritime mysteries. On December 4th, 1872, a two-masted brigantine was found drifting in the North Atlantic, under partial sail but entirely deserted. This vessel, the Mary Celeste, has since become the definitive archetype of the ghost ship mystery. Popular legend depicts a ship perfectly preserved, with warm food still on the galley table. The boarding logs prove otherwise. There was no steaming coffee, no half-eaten meals, and no trace of the supernatural. These enduring details were the work of late 19th century fiction writers and journalists looking to maximize the drama of an unexplained desertion. When we compare the sensationalized tabloids of the era to the clinical entries in the captain's logbook, the paranormal elements vanish, leaving only a cold set of physical facts. Our only reliable data comes from the boarding records of the Dei Gratia, the Canadian vessel that discovered the ship and documented its state with forensic precision. Stripped of its folklore, the Mary Celeste is a documented case study in fluid dynamics, mechanical failure, and the weight of prosecutorial bias. To find the crew, we must ignore a century of storytelling and audit the physical evidence left on board. The intercept took place at approximately 1 p.m. on Wednesday, December 4th. As this chart indicates, the ship was found midway between the Azores and the coast of Portugal, a position of absolute isolation. The Mary Celeste was moving unsteadily. Recognizing a ship in distress, First Mate Oliver DeVoe led a boarding party to investigate. DeVoe found no signs of violence. The crew's personal belongings, the ship's papers, and 6 months of provisions were completely undisturbed, ruling out a pirate raid or internal mutiny. The anomalies were not in what was missing, but in the mechanical state of the ship itself. The main hatch was locked and secure. However, the fore and lazarette hatches were wide open, with their covers placed intentionally on the deck nearby. Inside the hold, the boarding party found 3.5 feet of water. While significant, it was not enough to sink the vessel. Near the helm, the binnacle housing the ship's compass had been knocked from its mounting, its glass broken. They also found a makeshift sounding rod, used to manually check water depth, abandoned on the open deck. Most importantly, the ship's only lifeboat, a small yawl normally kept across the main hatch, was gone. The ropes used to secure that boat to the deck were found cleanly severed with a knife. The crew hadn't taken the time to unknot them. They had cut the boat loose for an immediate launch. This combination of open hatches, abandoned tools, and cut lashings points to an evacuation that was rapid and urgent, yet highly organized. The Dei Gratia brought the derelict into Gibraltar in mid-December to begin the legal process of claiming the salvage award. The resulting inquest took place under the jurisdiction of the Vice Admiralty Court, based here at the Rock of Gibraltar. 19th century maritime law dictated that the rescuers' payout was directly proportional to the danger they faced. A high-risk recovery meant a massive financial reward. Attorney General Frederick Solly Flood led the inquiry. From the outset, he was convinced that the abandonment was a cover for a crime. Solly Flood's theory was that the crew had broken into the ship's alcohol cargo, murdered Captain Briggs and his family in a drunken rage, and fled. He based his prosecution on a surveyor's report, claiming to have found bloodstains on the captain's sword and deliberate axe marks on the ship's bow. When we compare the prosecution's claims to the actual scientific data, the criminal narrative begins to fail. A chemical analysis by Dr. J. Patron proved that the stains on the sword were rust and biological residue, not blood. Additionally, U.S. Navy Captain Schufeld reviewed the damage to the bow and concluded that the marks were caused by the natural action of the sea on the ship's timbers, not an axe. Solly Flood largely ignored these scientific refutations because they contradicted his preconceived criminal theory. By awarding a suspiciously low salvage payment and failing to provide a rational explanation, the court left an informational gap that the public filled with myths of murder and ghosts. Captain Benjamin Briggs was a veteran mariner with his family on board. To understand why he would order an evacuation, we must look for a physical catalyst that would make remaining on the ship seem more dangerous than taking to a small boat. The first clue is in the ship's previous cargo, coal. Residual coal dust from previous voyages clogged the pump intake, rendering the automated drainage system useless. This forced the crew to rely on the manual sounding rod found on deck to track the rising water. With the pump broken, 3.5 feet of water would have appeared to be an unstoppable leak, creating a baseline of high anxiety for the captain. Then there was the cargo itself, 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol, 9 of which were made of highly porous oak. These 9 barrels had begun to leak, filling the tightly sealed hold with highly volatile fumes. In the restricted airless space of the hold, the alcohol fumes expanded, creating immense pressure against the deck. This pressure caused an audible rumbling, leading the crew to throw open the hatches in a desperate attempt to vent the explosive gas. This venting was likely followed by a terrifying chemical event. A stray spark likely ignited the vented fumes, creating a sudden pressure wave explosion. As demonstrated by chemist Andrea Sella in 2006, this type of cool blast creates a terrifying ball of flame and a massive pressure wave, but it moves too fast to scorch wood or leave carbon soot. Facing unpumpable water and an internal explosion, Briggs made a tactical decision. He launched the yawl and tethered it to the ship with a temporary tow line, planning to stay at a safe distance until the danger passed. The crew remained in the yawl, connected to the Mary Celeste by a single improvised tether. But when the wind suddenly picked up, the ship surged forward, putting immense strain on the line until it violently snapped. The crew was left drifting in an open boat, separated from their only means of survival by the winds they hoped would save them. The Mary Celeste, sound and buoyant, sailed away, leaving 10 people to succumb to the Atlantic. This mechanical and chemical tragedy was far too mundane for the public imagination. The facts were permanently overwritten in 1884 when Arthur Conan Doyle published a short story that renamed the ship and introduced the supernatural elements that define the legend today. The real ship met a far less mysterious end. In 1885, her final captain deliberately wrecked her on a reef off the coast of Haiti in an attempt at insurance fraud. The Mary Celeste remains a case study in how easily hard data can be erased by a more compelling, fictional narrative. When authorities and the media demand a sensational story, human confirmation bias will almost always ignore the empirical chemistry right in front of them.